Of all the most fashionable stars on the internet and social networks, Khaby Lame is undoubtedly the one who had the most dazzling success and the most total. Passed overnight from the status of simple incognito to that of world celebrity, the rise of the young influencer has been certainly more than spectacular. But it is all the more amazing when you realize that our dear friend Khaby Lame has never even said a single word in his entire career. Yes, because the young man counts more on his mimics and his inimitable grimaces than on the sound of his voice to be heard. Khaby Lame would thus be the worthy successor of a great lineage of comedians and silent comedians, such as the great Charlie Chaplin. But if the latter were limited by the fact that talking movies had not yet been developed, the young Senegalese influencer deliberately chose this method to make people laugh. But was it really a wise choice on the part of Khaby Lame? Or would it be finally only a simple fashion phenomenon, and which will fade inexorably like so many others before him? So make yourself comfortable, because this is what we will try to discover today in this video. Let's start. Those who know Khaby Lame well can easily do without this little introduction, because the real fans of the young influencer know him literally on the fingertips. But for all those who would not spend their time on TikTok or Instagram, it would be rather wise to give them a quick overview of the character, because the Khaby Lame syndrome has quickly crossed all borders, so much so that it has become a global phenomenon. And even the most recalcitrant and the most refractory to social networks have certainly heard about it. But who is this young man of 21 years, whose face decorated with legendary facial grimace is enthroned on all the memes and all the trolls of the world internet? Khaby Lame is originally from Senegal, but he emigrated with his family to Europe, more precisely to northern Italy, in the town of Chivasso. It is thus in this small, rather gray working-class city that this mischievous and laughing boy will grow up. From his earliest childhood, little Khaby Lame showed a great predisposition to good humor and fun, thus brightening the often gloomy daily life of his family, plagued by a rather worrying financial situation. Indeed, money has never really flowed in the Lame family, and the parents of the young boy have always had great difficulty in making ends meet. That's why Khaby started working very early on, in order to help his family with their daily expenses. As soon as he reached his majority, the young boy successfully applied for a job as an operator of large industrial machines in an old factory in the city. In this proletarian and miserable environment, Khaby Lame did not lose his legendary sense of humor and self-mockery. The young man quickly befriended his new colleagues, whom he spent his time to make laugh to tears with his hilarious jokes and his gestures so particular. In fact, the young Khaby Lame always wanted to be like his childhood idols, the iconic American comedians Eddie Murphy and Will Smith. He then imagined hundreds of small hilarious sketches, which he played in a private one-man show for his friends. The young man was strongly inspired by his two favorite actors, trying to reproduce the hilarious facial grimaces of Eddie Murphy and the funny and scathing lines of the Prince of Bel-Air. His comic recipe worked wonderfully, and the young Khaby Lame amused his small world, not knowing that in a few months he will entertain the whole planet. Because when the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world in 2020, Italy was plunged into a near total lockdown, forcing non-essential businesses and industries to shut down. And like so many other people in his situation, the young man was forced to quit his job, which was bound to have disastrous repercussions on the family budget. But again, instead of despairing or lamenting his poor fate, the young Khaby Lame is going to launch a new challenge, because he has just discovered TikTok and its crazy universe, where an ordinary person can quickly become an international star, and where artists like him can literally blossom. Khaby Lame will thus very quickly become familiar with this Chinese social media very popular with young people, and although his beginnings were rather hazardous, the young artist was soon going to succeed in beating all records. The first videos of the young man are indeed small sketches without much interest, and which turn around the theme of the pandemic and the sanitary measures. Like these ignoble tutorials that are supposed to teach us to wash our hands, and that have swarmed on the networks after the first confinements across the globe. But the young man quickly gave way to his true talent, that of a comedian who can express himself only with the mimics of his face and the gestures of his body. Skills that only very few actors really have, and that would ensure the young man a meteoric rise. Khaby Lame decided to change the format of his sketches, choosing to shoot parody videos, a very promising niche on the internet with the multiplication of viral memes on almost all social networks. He will therefore mock these same influencers who flood the web with their own videos of tutorials or life hacks, and which, for the most part, are a bunch of nonsense. The young comedian therefore had a lot of material to exploit, which he soon did, and brilliantly, please. Because instead of doing it like most of his fellow influencers, the young Khaby Lame decided that he was going to make reaction videos, but without saying strictly no words. This technique of voluntary mutism would indeed prove to be a winner because the young man knew well how to highlight it without falling into cliché or absurdity. Khaby Lame used the universal language of the human body and the mimics of his very expressive face in order to communicate and pass on his derisory humor. Thanks to this, the young man was able to build up fans from all walks of life and from all nationalities because everyone can understand the language of the body and the face. And with his inimitable and very expressive grimaces and mimics, the young Khaby Lame has literally hit the roof on TikTok, posting videos that have broken almost all records. His little sketches of just a few minutes are seen by millions of users, and this in just a few days. Khaby Lame is having a great time ridiculing these young Instagrammers and other TikTokers who publish videos of tutorials very often stupid and without any sense. The young Senegalese artist will publish short videos, relying on silence and his incredible mimics to demonstrate the flagrant ineptitude of this kind of content. He demonstrates that it is much easier to peel a banana by hand instead of trying to peel it with a knife, trying to pass himself off as a master of blades and peeling. This video alone will garner more than 274 million views, becoming one of the most watched videos on the Chinese social network. But this famous banana sketch is not the only one to have beaten such audience records, because other videos, all as hilarious, had the same success. In one of them, for example, the young Senegalese comedian will parody the video of an influencer who tries to show us how to close a bag of bread. The latter will use a pair of scissors to cut the top of the bag in two, then tie the two ends together. But Khaby Lame will simply tie the top of the bag with a very ordinary noose, with his famous expression of exasperated amazement on his face and his emblematic hand gesture. This video has been seen more than 160 million times on TikTok, with sometimes several million views in a single day. Of course, there are now hundreds of videos on the TikTok account of Khaby Lame, which has more than 191 million subscribers, as well as nearly 2 billion likes. We can also mention this hilarious sequence where the young comic parodies a producer of life hacks videos, and which has collected more than 278 million views in record time. In this last one, we can see a tutorial aiming at modifying a glass with plastic handcuffs in order to make a kind of mug with an improvised handle. And there, as always, Khaby Lame will demonstrate that a glass is a glass, as long as it is used to contain a liquid and that it allows us to drink it. You understood it. The young Khaby Lame has set himself up as the new champion of simplicity with this leitmotif: why contemplate life unnecessarily? Indeed, why make complicated when we can make simpler? A rather existentialist question on the edges, and to say the least philosophical, but which reaches its paroxysm with the young Khaby. The principle is therefore overly simplistic, so much so that Khaby's videos could have literally gone unnoticed, drowned by the endless stream of viral content that floods the World Wide Web every day. But it was without counting the innate charisma of the young Senegalese TikToker, and especially on his gestures and his inimitable mimics, and which only he has the real secret. Indeed, no one before him had been able to reach such an artistic consecration, and this without even pronouncing the least word. He joins the ranks of actors who left their mark on the silent movies of yesteryear, such as the legendary Charlie Chaplin or the comic duo formed by Laurel and Hardy. But it must be said that for the latter, it was more a necessity than a real artistic choice. Film technology was then in its infancy, and films did not yet have a soundtrack. Moreover, as soon as talking pictures were developed, silent films were no longer heard of, and the stars could emerge from the world of silence in which they were condemned to play. Today, apart from mimes, almost nobody is interested in the cinema and even less in its immutable rules. However, playing a role by simply expressing oneself with gestures or facial grimaces is far from being an easy thing. And we can say that Khaby Lame masters marvelously his techniques, which have become archaic, but which in fact remain the proof of the true talent of any self-respecting actor. Because you can test it yourself by putting on a movie or a series and putting the sound on mute. You will then be able to appreciate the real acting of the actors on stage, and you will be able to easily judge their performance. Thus, the one among them who will have been able to communicate a part of his emotions to you is undoubtedly the most talented actor. So is our friend Khaby, who can literally transmit his feelings and communicate with you without a single sound coming out of his vocal cords. And if today he has the second most followed account on the Chinese social network, it is because he was able to take up the challenge of linguistic borders by adopting an almost universal language. Whether you are Zimbabwean, Chilean, French, South Korean, or even from a remote Inuit tribe, you will inevitably understand Khaby and especially laugh with him heartily. One thing is certain: if the young Senegalese influencer continues with his special recipe, it is undoubtedly that he will be crowned as the new king of TikTok, and that's the only evil we can wish him. And that's it for today. What do you think about the incredible rise of young Khaby Lame on TikTok and the millions of dollars he pockets without even saying a word? And do you really think that the young Senegalese comedian will continue on his surprising momentum while keeping his recipe of mutism and facial expressions? Or will he finally change his methods in order to integrate the world of seventh art? Tell us in the comments, and if you like this video, don't forget to put a like and subscribe and activate the notifications. See you soon for new discoveries out of the ordinary.